that was probably one of the darkest times that I put myself through. I lost who I was, had become a ghost, an empty shell. I lost hope. I had nothing in my own eyes, no worth. And I knew if I was ever going to get better, somebody had to know.
Welcome to Unseen Atlanta, an Atlanta Mission podcast where we shine the light on some of the city's toughest issues. We do this by sharing true stories of real people who've experienced homelessness and addiction. We're also going to bring you subject matter experts who give some context to some of these issues. I'm your host, Rachel Reynolds.
And I'm Jonathan Miller, your co-host.
Today, we are going to bring you a really great story. It's a really hard story. We talked about some really sensitive things, including some childhood sexual abuse. Yeah. So I want to say that up front. You probably don't want to listen to this with your kids or if it's going to trigger you in any way. But the story that Sean shared is just a story of courage to really own his own story.
Yeah, it's very special
It
episode.
is. It's really special.
We'll be hearing from Sean's mom as our subject matter expert. So we really just get the full perspective of Sean's story and then what it's like to be a mother of someone who's going through addiction.
Yeah, it's a really emotional story. I think it's a story a lot of people can connect to. Just her extreme love for her son just really fueled her never giving up on him. Yeah. Another thing is we want to dedicate this whole episode to Thomas Shuford. He was on staff with Atlanta Mission for many years, a beloved member of the Atlanta Mission community, also a beloved member of the recovery community, especially in Athens. He worked in many different forms on our campuses, and he himself had been in recovery for over 20 years. And so many of the guys, you'll hear Sean talk about Thomas, so many of the guys felt so close to him, not only because he was just an amazing, warm, generous human, but they also felt so close to him because he had some lived experience with addiction. So they really felt like he could talk to them just from a personal experience. We want to dedicate this. He passed away earlier this year. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let's dive in, Jonathan.
Let's do it.
We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
We want to talk a little bit about your story today. So we'll just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about where you're from.
I'm from Noonan, Georgia. It's a little small town about 30, 45 minutes south of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Let's see, growing up, I played baseball a lot with a twin brother. Pretty normal childhood life. My dad wasn't always around because for whatever reason.
Sure.
But, I had a great mother. I had two great older brothers. And
so there was four of you, four brothers.
Yes, four of us.
Any sisters?
One sister, but she didn't live with us.
Okay, so it's a house full of boys.
Yeah, all boys.
So you liked baseball growing up?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Me and my twin brother both. I actually had a chance to play in the Little League World Series, but decided it was cool to go hit trees with sticks, and it wrapped around the tree and hit me in the eye, and it started bleeding.
Oh, no.
So that pretty much
took you out.
Killed that.
Yeah.
So obviously you're at the Potter's house. Tell us a little bit about how your addiction started. What kind of, how did you end up here?
Well, addiction is obviously, it's a side effect of what's truly wrong with you. So I had some trauma from the childhood that I hadn't dealt with, and I desired to change how I felt about who I was, about, what I'd been through. And it started subtly. It never starts, just boom, all at once. Mm-hmm. It started as smoking marijuana and showing up in my life as trying to skip school and isolate. And after smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol, life got harder and I isolated more.
What were you running from?
Self-loathing. Feelings of not being enough.
Do you know when those started or how those started?
Yeah, I know how they started. Definitely. And I don't really share too often about how they started. About 5 or 6 I can't really, it's all a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
But I was sexually abused by at the time it was a babysitter. And I didn't really know what happened because I was just,
you were so little.
I was ignorant. Yeah. I was too young. And I knew that it was wrong, but I felt like if anything were to have been said about it, that it was just going to get worse. And so instead of vocalizing my problems, I started to mask and bottle my emotions and hide the burdens that I carried so that they wouldn't be imposed on somebody else.
I can imagine a lot of fear and
Absolutely.
shame,
Yeah,
just taking control of your life.
absolutely. And once shame and fear and guilt has a foothold, it tends to grow, just like anything else.
Mm.
I never really spoke about it. I just bottled it up because I was a tough kid, you know. I always put on this facade of I'm strong, I can handle it. Nobody needs to know, and I don't want to trouble anybody with my burden. And this was a young age, I'm thinking this. Like, I grew up way too quick. I'm not unique. I'm not the only
No,
one that
yeah.
this has happened to.
Mhm.
And there are people going through the same thing, and they could be doing the same things that I did, which is not talking about it, bottling it up, and just,
Was this the first time at the Potter's house? Was it the first time you'd ever talked about it?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I knew that it was the root of some of my problems. So I
And
had
you
to
just
get it
never
out.
talked. You never talked about it. You just kept bottling it down.
Mm-hmm. And
I mean,
that's
obviously,
addiction is a side effect of that.
yeah.
It was just a desire to change who I was, how I felt, because I felt like there was something wrong with me.
So was that the only time this happened?
No.
So it kept happening.
Well, not with that person. Because after a while, my brothers were old enough to watch us, and we stopped going to that babysitter, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was about 8 when it happened again, but it was somebody much closer. And it had an even worse effect on me because when someone's close to you, you trust them. You expect safety, or you feel safe, or you're supposed to feel safe. And all I ever got from what seemed to be the person that I entrusted with safety and security was betrayal and pain. And it really warped my way of having relationships with people, which is a big reason as to why I isolated as I got older, because I didn't trust anybody. And I just didn't have a relationship with anybody. And when I did, I was aggressive and standoffish. Nobody wants to be around that. And I didn't want to be around people because it wasn't their fault. And I knew that. I always blamed myself. I didn't know who else to blame.
Why did you blame yourself?
I guess at that age, and you don't really understand what's taking place, you question why. And the first thing you ask yourself is, why me?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? What did I do to you to deserve this hurt? And you never get answers.
So, your addiction really was just a coping strategy for the pain that
Absolutely.
you were feeling.
You're in pain for so long, you want to change how you feel eventually.
When did you first start using?
I was like 14 years old. Yeah. I started using marijuana. It didn't take but maybe 2 or 3 years before I started using methamphetamine. And it didn't even numb the pain. It just helped you to ignore it. It was always there. The pain's always been there. Hasn't gone away. Not until, recently.
So, so you're coping, you're masking your emotions, your hurt. When did you recognize, hey, this is a problem?
Well, about going on 2 years ago, I was homeless. I was in a bad predicament in Columbus, Georgia. And I didn't think there was any other way out. Drugs didn't work. Nothing else worked. So I was going to try to kill myself. I did try to kill myself. And I knew when the cops picked me up, the way the cop was talking to me, he wasn't mad at me. For the first time, I saw somebody that cared. And I just didn't want to feel like that anymore. I didn't want to feel alone. I didn't want to be in pain. 14 years of pain is a long time.
It is.
And I just wanted to end it. I didn't see any other way out. But I guess God had something different for me.
Yeah.
So that cop picks you up, and then what?
Well, I got into a little bit of trouble, obviously, for what I was doing in the process of all this. I wasn't supposed to be where I was at, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I sat in jail for about 8 months.
Okay.
And luckily, my probation officer, I went to high school with. And rather than sending me to prison like the court system usually does, she fought for me and fought for me and fought for me to be entered into a program. And the person that looked into the Potter's house was my mom. Because her friend had gone through the program years upon years ago, and the judge was okay with it. He said that, he said it was a reputable program, and about 3 months after that sentencing, I showed up at the Potter's house.
So this whole time, you're in addiction. You try to commit suicide. You're with the cops. What does your family know at this point?
Nothing.
They don't know anything.
They just know you're in addiction.
They knew I was on drugs. I was a really closed off person. Nobody knew what I was going through or what I was doing but me. And it became at one point to protect them because I knew what I had become. And they didn't really know anything. I just up and left one time because the police showed up to my house in another county, and I ran and had been running for years ever since that.
Did you stay in contact with your mom?
Yeah, here and there.
Yeah.
The guilt and the shame of doing drugs and just
Yeah.
what I felt like was just me being a complete and utter disappointment to my family. I just decided it would be better if they didn't have me in their life. They could be happier without me.
Yeah.
So you get to the Potter's house. What's it like?
Scary at first because I didn't know what to expect, and extremely new because I had been out of jail all my life. And the first thing that they did was they fed me so much chicken I felt like I was going to be sick.
That's the first step of our program is chicken.
Yeah.
That's actually the 13th step in the 12-step program. Feed them a lot of chicken.
I would have to say the very first thing that they had us do was, I don't know what it was about this man, Tom Shuford. I don't know what it was about him that I just felt so comfortable with him. And he told us to write down on a piece of paper, something that may have traumatized you in your past. And that was the first time I had ever shared with anyone that I was sexually abused when I was younger.
How did that feel?
I was scared. A lot of fear. Apprehension. And then after I finally told him, when I finally actually came out and said what was bothering me, he was like, oh, hold up. And he pulled me outside, and we went and had a conversation. And I felt relief.
What was your conversation about?
Just making sure that I was comfortable with everybody in there knowing that. And just why. He asked a lot of the same questions, why I hadn't told anybody or anything like that. And
yeah, what made it about when he said that, write down something that traumatized you? You could have put a lot of things down.
I could have put a lot of things.
Yeah. What about that moment made you say, okay, I'm ready to talk about this?
Because I realized it was probably one of the darkest times that I put myself through. Mentally, emotionally, I had become a ghost, an empty shell I lost who I was. I lost hope. I had nothing in my own eyes, no worth. Uh, and I knew if I was ever going to get better, somebody had to know. Somebody had to know, and that was Mr. Shuford. I don't know what it was about him that made me feel comfortable, but
He makes a lot of people feel comfortable. He made a lot of people feel comfortable.
yeah, absolutely. He's definitely been like a light for me in my recovery. He's definitely been a mentor, and yeah, he's been a big part of this.
Yeah, talk a little bit about what you're at the Potter's house. What was it like being in that community of guys? Because you talk so much about isolation.
Yeah,
And then you get to the Potter's house. You can't really be isolated because you're
there's no
with like
such thing as
100 of your best
isolation there.
friends.
There's no such thing as
Even
isolation
though there's a lot
there.
of space, it's not isolation.
Well, the opposite of isolation is connection. And that's one of the things they try to instill there is community. Having accountability and just people you can be openly vulnerable with, which is completely and totally foreign to me. But, I mean, it was good. It was different. It felt like I had opened up a way to be, trusting again, to trust people, to be who I actually was, even though I didn't actually know who I was because I didn't know who I was for so long. I just masked it with drugs. But being there at the Potter's house with those guys, hearing them be openly vulnerable, it creates a sense of brotherhood. Like, it bonds you with these people, whether you get along or not. It bonds you with these people in ways you could never imagine. Because regardless of your background, regardless of the culture you come from, everybody loves each other there. And it's like I said, whether they get along or not, they love each other and they lift each other up. That's the main goal of the community there. And they do a good job of it.
So tell us a little bit about some of the things that have been really influential being at the Potter's house. Like what is going to make it different this time?
Oh, I got to the root of the problem. And they actually showed me the clinical side to addiction. That would be the classes that you take there. They actually showed me the root to the addiction, the trauma behind it, the fact that it was a side effect. They show you scientifically what it does to you, how you can stop it before it arises, and it gives you a strong foundation there, a strong foundation and a nice little toolbox of things that help you to stay clean when you actually get out there.
So you just really felt, I now have tools that I can use to cope with the things I'm feeling.
Well, the main thing that they have you do is when you get to the final phase of the program is they get you rooted in community, rooted in church, rooted in meetings, and set up a network of people that you can rely on and trust to help you. Accountability.
It must be hard for you because you tried to build your life around not doing that.
It's a little difficult, but I had a friend of mine there. He was like, "You want to go to the business meeting of an NA meeting?" And I was like, "No, not really." And he was like, "Well, you're gonna." He's like, "You're gonna go," and I was like, "All right." And he was like, "All right. Well, we're gonna get you a service position too." And I'm just like,
"Oh no!"
I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "It'd be good for you." And I've now dove headfirst into service work and helping other people in the same predicament that I've been in. It also helps me to understand that in order to change, you have to change. So if I don't want to go back to the same way that I was living before, I obviously have to do something different. And all the Potter's House has done is shown me exactly what I did wrong, where I went wrong, and how I can do it differently.
How did it feel, you're serving people that have gone through the same thing you have experienced? How did that feel for you, and how did it impact your recovery?
It helps to give me empathy where they are. It helps me to relate. I also know when to push them and when to draw back. It just really gives me the experience to actually be able to help somebody instead of maybe cause them to shy away from recovery. That's really it's about all that's done for me.
Mhm.
How has your faith played a piece in this? Or
It's
has it?
absolutely, yeah. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here. I believe that cop was sent there by God to save me that night.
Mm.
Divine intervention. God always has a purpose for you. You are where you're supposed to be 100% of the time.
Mm.
It took me a long time to understand that, and I always questioned him. But the restored relationship that I have with God now is allowed me to enjoy the journey,
Mm.
to just sit back and relax and know He's in control, which has given me just as much peace as dealing with the trauma has. It's knowing everything happens for a reason, everything happened for a reason, for a greater purpose.
And what are your relationships like now with your mom?
Great. I'm in contact with her on a regular basis.
Is she proud of you?
Yes.
Hmm.
This is the result of many years of praying and support, and she's never given up on me.
Hmm.
A lot of people did. I gave up, but she never did. Yeah, it's gotten a lot better. There's still so much that I have to talk to her about, but it's gotten a lot better.
What does the future look like for you?
Bright, hopeful,
Hopeful.
clean, successful,
Mm.
and I could see myself in being service for the rest of my life. Because now that I know what it is to be loved, and I know what it is to trust, I just want to be that for somebody else.
Hmm.
And if I can just change one person's outlook on life, or help somebody that's been through the same thing that I've been through, then that's all that really matters to me. I know what it's like to be loved now. Now I want to show somebody else.
That's so powerful.
Mm.
I want to ask, I'm going to go back to thinking about your story. You didn't have to share that with us.
Mm-hmm.
You could have kept it hidden. Why is it important for you to share your story?
Because it could help somebody. I want anybody else that's experiencing the same things that I've been through to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. That if you're ever going to heal, then you have to put it out there in the open. Oh, holding it in will only numb you and only cause pain. It's like a cancer. It just grows and grows and grows. It never stops. You can numb it, but it'll never stop growing. It'll always be there.
Yeah, thank you for being so generous with your story.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's our stories are the most powerful thing that we have. And I think you talking about helping one person, just the courage it took for you to write that down that day, I know that's going to help many people to
I
have
hope.
that courage.
It's a big deal.
It is. It's a big deal.
Sean, I'm just thinking back to the Sean that was sitting in jail, wondering what would happen next. If you could say something to that Sean in that moment, what would it be?
If I could say one thing to myself in that moment, get ready. Open up. Don't be scared. It's okay to be who you are. That'd be about it.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Something I needed to hear.
I know. I'm like, yes, Sean, yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah.
You're so courageous to share that, so generous with your story. I mean, just sitting here, I wish everyone could feel you have so much love. And you obviously are able to connect deeply with people. So I hope that everyone that listens to this can feel that in your voice, feel that in your story. I mean, I think,
Yeah, you have such a gentle voice.
I know.
And I just feel like when you speak, I'm getting a big hug.
Well, and there was
And it's so warm.
so much confidence in what you're saying of, hey, if I don't own this part of my story, if I don't own my story, then I can't move forward. And I think for so many of us, we may not have been sitting in jail like Sean, but there's so many parts of our own story that we don't want to deal with or think about. And so I hope that I know I'm going to take this and have more courage to share that and confront those things. I hope that you all can take that with you. And I hope you really enjoyed and are proud of Sean for sharing his
Yeah.
story as much as we are. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah. And stay tuned. We're going to hear from our subject matter expert.
Next. We're so happy to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
This is Sean's mom. We just talked to Sean. Sean's amazing.
Thank you so much. I think so.
You've obviously raised a great guy.
I did the best I could with what I had to do with,
Yeah. He loves you a lot.
Yeah.
and I love him. I have 4 sons, Kyle, Seth, Brett, and Sean. And unfortunately, all 4 of them have suffered from some form of addiction. Each had their own addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. What was life like when you were raising the boys? It sounds like their dad wasn't
No, he wasn't.
in the picture.
No,
So you were a single mom.
yes. And it was hard, but, I wouldn't take any of it back if I could. I am so proud of all 4 of my boys. I mean, they're amazing, and they have so much potential. And I hope that they can see how amazing they are and where their new life is going to lead them. Because, they can do anything. Anything they want to do, they can do it.
One thing that stood out to me from Sean's story was that you never gave up on him, even though he had. I just want to know, like, what was going through your mind as a mother that made you so resilient?
Well, God played a big role in it. I pray for him. Always have and always will. And I believe the Potter House was the answer that God sent.
Because you found it for him.
The Potter's House is a wonderful place.
How'd you know about it?
Through a organization in the county we live in,
Okay.
Coweta Force. It was actually, they helped to start it with someone whose son had accidentally OD'd. And he was a friend of Sean's. So she helped start it. And as soon as I found out that it was Christian-based, I knew then that's where he needs to be. And I would, I would recommend it for anybody with addiction. I really would, because they have done so much for Sean. I mean, if you'd have seen him when all this started versus now, you wouldn't know it was the same person. Drugs just robbed all of them, really, of their potential at the time. But moving forward, they still had that potential.
Yeah.
And I'm still proud of them. I'd never give up on them. Never. Because the one thing I always told them growing up was, please just do me one favor. Don't ever make me come and identify you in the morgue. Because a mother's child is not supposed to die before her. And they're not that way. That's not the way God intended it, I don't believe. God has his timing.
So what was it like? Because I'm sure there was a lot of times throughout the years that you didn't know where Sean was or what was going on.
Exactly.
And what was that like as a mom?
Constant worry. You know, sleepless nights, wondering where he was, who he was with, what he was doing. Is he okay? You just never knew.
When it like never goes away. You can't ever like.
No, it never went away. It was a nightmare. It really was a nightmare. And I don't envy anybody that is going through this nightmare. And for anybody out there that's listening, if you're addicted, I would highly recommend that you go to the Potter's House. It is Christian based, and that's what makes it so good. Because you got to have God in your life too.
Yeah.
Because God's going to get you through.
So you found out about the Potter's House, and then Sean gets in.
Right?
How did that feel?
Yeah. Were you like happy he was
Oh, yeah.
somewhere?
Oh, yeah. I knew
Were you able to, like,
exactly where
sleep?
he was, what he was doing, and yes, I could sleep.
Like, did that make you feel so much relief?
You just don't know. Yes, it did. It really did.
And now it's not even. I'm sure at the beginning stages it was like a relief. He's safe. The transformation that's happened is
Unbelievable.
right.
The first time I went to the Potter's House and I saw him, I was just in awe. I couldn't believe it. I thought, that's my son? Huh. He turned out good looking.
So when you got to see him for the first time, it was like, wow.
Oh, yeah. It blowed me away. I couldn't believe it.
And he keeps in contact with you
Oh.
regularly?
We were texting each other this morning, actually.
Okay.
Mom, when you going to be there?
Yeah, tell me about what's the transformation been like in him?
Oh, wow. I see the light in his eyes again because the light was burned out a long time ago. You know, there was no zest there. And like I said, he looked horrible. And he was just somebody I didn't recognize. And then after he went to the Potter's House, the first time I went to see him, I looked at him and he was smiling. And the zest for life was back in his eyes, and I knew then that he was on the right path. He was on the right path to getting there. And I believe he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. Because I'm not going to let him quit. I've never been a quitter, and he's not either. I didn't raise my boys to be quitters.
Do you feel like he has a new life now?
Yes, he's got to persevere. You know, he's got to remember, God gives you strength, courage, peace, and comfort. Just take it to him. I mean, that's how I've lived my whole life. I mean, imagine raising 4 boys by yourself.
What would you tell another mom who was in your situation with Sean, your other sons? What would you tell them when their child is still in the midst of addiction? How do they keep going?
You just can't give up on them. You can't. You've always got to be there no matter what. You've got to encourage them. And, I mean, if you have to, put them there yourself. You know, put them there yourself.
When you think about Sean's future, what do you see?
Nothing but brightness. He's smart. He is smart, highly intelligent. He's just got to believe in himself and get going. Because he's not too old to start over. You're never too old to start over. Never.
You have an incredible amount of positivity and resilience. It's very inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just the way you talk about life, it doesn't sound like life's been easy for you, and continues to not be easy. But you have just a positivity about it.
Well, I mean, life hasn't been easy, but I'm not going to complain because there's so many people in this world that's worse off than me. So who am I to complain? You know, you roll with the punches. You take what life gives you and make the best of it. And I have no regrets. Well, except for one. And that one being that I was so ignorant to drugs because I've never done drugs. I didn't know what the signs were to look for drugs. I really didn't. And then by the time that I was enlightened, it was
too late.
It was done. It was too late.
Thank you so much for sharing today. I know that it's emotional and hard, but I think your story is, there are so many people like you that they have kids who have struggled with this. And as a parent, like, you feel like you're in a hard spot. What do I do? You don't ever stop loving them.
No, never.
You don't ever stop wanting what you're saying. You see that potential. You want that potential for them. And so I think your story is so, it resonates with so many people because they're in your same boat.
All I can say is never give up on them because they've already given up on themselves. So it's up to you to reel them back in and give them the confidence to know that they can keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Just forget the past. It's history. Just look forward to the future.
Yeah.
I just feel so much hope.
Yeah, I do too.
Just hearing Sean's story and your experience as a mother, and there's hope out there,
Yeah.
no matter what your situation
Well, and
is.
it reminds me just so much of, like, the Lord never gives up on us.
No.
And, we have that relationship with the Father. It's it's talking to a mother, like, there's just that, as a parent, you never want to give up on your kid. And so I really hope, that's what I feel like I got so much from that, is like, just as much as we as parents don't want to give up on our kids, the Lord never gives up on us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we
giving
can't
up is never an option.
No, it's not an option.
No.
Even though sometimes in our darkest moments, it feels like the only option is to give up. So thank you so much for sharing your story. We really hope that someone was able to see just the incredible power of love that Debbie has for her son, or all of her sons. And we hope that really resonated with you, and we will see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening and engaging with these challenging yet vital conversations about mental health, addiction, homelessness, and trauma in our city. Facing these issues head on is how we ignite real transformation in Atlanta. Thank you to our season sponsor, the Scott Pryor Law Group. The transformation you've heard wouldn't be possible without incredible partners like the Scott Pryor Law Group, personal injury and accident attorneys. Their compassion and dedication to our community fuel stories of transformation just like these. If you are injured in a semi-truck or car accident, call the Scott Pryor Law Group. As a U.S. Marine, we fight and win for you. Our clients are family for life. We handle all types of injuries. You focus on healing, and we handle the rest. Now, if today's episode inspired you to take the next step, we would love to invite you to join the work that God is doing here. There are two really impactful ways for you to get involved. First, you can give financially to help us continue the work you heard about today. Second, you can volunteer your time by serving at one of our campuses. You can find all the ways to give and get involved at atlantamission.org. Thank you again for being part of this journey. Please join us next time as we uncover more powerful stories of hope and transformation.